Let's warm up our hands, our ears, to listen better, our mouths to respond. Yes, as Eddie Perek said, yes, you're very silent. So let's try if you can move a little bit. Can you repeat after me? Zigzigmek. 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 Oh, great. And can you repeat? Dig, dig, dig. Okay, I divide you in half. This part is going to say zigzigmek, and this one dig, dig, dig. Okay, let's try. Zigzigmek. 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 Great. I'm not going to tell you the story of Zigzigmek another time, but I would like to tell you the story of the beginning of the universe. At the beginning of the universe, God created the earth. And on the earth, first there were oceans, seas, and from the seas and oceans emerged continents. There was a ground we could walk on, and from this ground grew up trees. There were forests, and in the forest appears animal. First animal, and then more animals, and also in the forest appears the truth. And the truth was living very happily in between plants and animals. However, one day, the truth saw the man. And when the truth saw the man, immediately was thinking, wow, the man needs me. I'm going to meet the man. So the truth went out of the forest, approached to the first village, get inside, and when the truth was walking through the village, suddenly saw the huge house of the mayor. Approached to this house, close up to the door, tuk tuk tuk. The truth heard a noise. And suddenly the door started to open and open. Ah! Shut this up. The truth was scared more than you and just went to the door of the baker. And again, tuk tuk tuk. Heard the noise, the door started to open and suddenly closed. And each time the truth approached to the house, knocked to the door opened and immediately shut. And it was because the truth was naked. And nobody wanted to accept the naked truth. So, after a while, the truth started crying. And the truth sat under the tree and was crying and crying and crying, and suddenly, the truth heard a noise and heard that through the village is walking somebody, and heard that the doors open and people invite this person inside. The truth looked around and saw a colorfully dressed person. But this person didn't get inside the house, any houses. But this person saw crying truth, approached to the truth and asked, "Why are you crying?" "Oh, nobody wants to accept me because I'm naked." "Look, I have a lot of beautiful clothes. There is enough space for you. Get inside these clothes and go with me." And the truth got inside these clothes of this colorfully dressed person and went with this person. Since that time, nobody shouted the door in front of the truth, hide that inside this colorfully dressed person clothes. And since that time, the truth is going around. And what is the name of this person, colorfully dressed? This is the story. And since that time, we can say that the story is a fiction which holds the truth. And there is something true about this story, because when we are telling just naked truth, nobody likes it. However, if we dress what we want to say in a story, we can see in the story like in a mirror. And for that reason, since the beginning of the universe, people use stories to transmit different kind of knowledge. Why story is so important? And why story is so powerful? Because it has a lot of impact to our emotions. Why people use the story? Because it can go deep, deep, deep into our mind. I was driving a car one day with a beautiful girl, and in front of us there was a huge truck with a load of heavy, heavy stones. And this truck goes very slowly. We were surrounded by the beautiful landscape, and I was observing forests, lakes, beautiful sky, but this girl was concentrated on the stones. And she was saying, why this car goes so slow? I said, what? Why are you looking at these stones? Look at the beautiful landscape. But she was, no. Why this car goes so slow? And at that time I realized we are living in the same reality, but we are experiencing different stories. And depend what story we are concentrate on. We can concentrate on the stones and go down, or we can fly. I asked her, okay, change a little bit imagination of this truck, and don't think about these stones and the heavy ones. Try to think about these stones as made, for instance, of wool. And she was starting to think and think and think, and suddenly a smile appears at her face. And she was imagining, okay, these stones can have wings, and suddenly can fly. Story can enable us to fly, or story can enable us to go down. Depend of the story. Depend of the type of the story. We are living in the world emerged with a lot of negative stories. And for that reason, very often we are very sad. Depend what type of story we experience. Our mood is different. So why it's very important to think about the ecology of the story? What type of story we listen? Because stories shape our imagination, and the stories shape our experience of reality. We can be in the same reality, but experience different story. I'm working with stories every day, and I'm trying to look at the stories from different perspectives. Stories can bring hope, and we can share such a story. One day there was two brothers, and these two brothers lived in a very, very rich family. They live in a beautiful house. They had wonderful toys, marvelous food. However, these two brothers fought every day. They quarrel. They quarrel about everything. They quarrel about toys. They quarrel who has to sit by the right side of the father or left side of the father. Each reason was good to quarrel. And these two brothers grew up in the eternal quarrel. When they grew up, parents were so rich that parents bought a huge land. But this land was divided by the river. Left side of the river, the house for the older brother. And on the right side, for the younger one. The brothers started to live in these houses, and they visited each other every day. However, each time they visited, they quarreled. And one day, older brother went to visit the younger one. They sat by the table. However, this time the younger brother got so angry that he shouted, "I never wanted to see you again. Go out of my house and never come back." Hearing that, the older brother stood up and returned to his house. But before he returned to his house, he said, "Also, I never want to see you again. I hate you." But when the older brother stood in his house and looked on another side of the river, he saw the younger brother in his house, and he got angry. And each time he stood in the window and looked on another side of the river, he saw his brother's house, saw his brother, and each time he got very angry. And the time passed on. After 3 months, the older brother decided to go for a trip for 2 months. He prepared his bags. He was ready to go when suddenly, tuk. He was surprised. He didn't accept any visit. However, he approached the door, opened the door, and he saw an old master. "Oh, young man, I am looking for a job. I can do everything you want. Do you have any job for me?" And the older brother got an idea. If you can do everything, if you are a good master, maybe you can build a wall by the river. The wall such a large and such a tall that I would never see the house of my younger brother. The master said, "Okay, it's going to take for me 2 months, just the time of the trip." So the older brother went for the trip, and the master started to work. When the older brother returned from his trip, he was so curious to see what the wall looks like that he didn't enter the house. He just ran to the backyard, and here he saw that the old master didn't build the wall. He saw that he built a bridge. What? He destroyed so much material, he didn't obey him? He's going to receive a lesson. So the older brother ran toward the old master and wanted to beat him, when suddenly from his house ran out the younger brother. And the younger brother ran towards the bridge with open arms. "Oh, older brother, thank you for what you decided to do. Thank you to build a bridge. I was hating you. I put you out of my house. I never wanted to see you again. And you decided to build a bridge that we can be more close to each other. Thank you. You're more wise. Sorry for all quarrels. I never want to quarrel with you anymore." And saying that, the younger brother crossed the bridge, approached to the older brother, and held him in his arms. And at this moment, older brother started to cry. And also he held very strongly his younger brother and decided to make peace with him. And both brothers made peace and decided never to quarrel again. And they decided to make a party for the peace. and for the old master. But when they returned, they saw that the older master took his tools and wanted to go out, to go away. They approached to him and said, why do you want to go? For what you did, you can stay with us for all your life. But the older master said, oh, I would be pleased to stay with you, but I am very busy. I have many bridges to build. This is the story of the Dragon of Wawel. Do you know this story?
Yes.
So everybody knows it, but I try to tell it again. Because this legend is one of the most important legends in the moment for the world. The story says about the kingdom, very happy kingdom. Before in Poland we had a lot of happiness, and the kingdom was ruled by the king Trak. However, one day the terrible dragon installed under the hill of Wawel. And what was the reaction of the king and his counselors? They decided to destroy the dragon. But what was the way to destroy the dragon? They sent soldiers, knights. 1 night, 10 nights, 100 nights, 1,000 nights. They were not able to destroy the dragon. And one day, there was a small boy approaching the king. And he said, I would like to combat the dragon. The king laughed. You want to destroy? However, king didn't have any choice. So, you know the story that he gave him the skin of the sheep. And this young boy was very clever because he knew that the silver can combat the dragon. He put the silver inside and sewed the artificial sheep and put in front of the dragon's cave. So when the dragon woke up, got hungry and eaten the sheep, and then got very thirsty, ran to the river, drank half of the river and exploded. Why this story is important? In the modern society we can live very happily. However, we have modern dragons. And what is the way we are combating the dragons? The same like in the legend. We have a dragon of terrorism. We are cutting one head, there are 10 heads growing. So we should to invest in a young society. We have to think about education. We have to think about how to grow up young generation, that this young generation would not repeat the old ways we use, but they can be creative to destroy modern dragons. Why? It is important to change our educational systems, and why story can ignite action. I will tell you another story which is based for the chocolate revolution in education. If we are looking at the modern system of education, we can compare it with a story about the difference in between hell and the paradise. Maybe you know the story, but I would like to repeat it. One day there was a man who was interested what is the difference in between hell and the paradise. So there was an angel who said, okay, I can show you the difference. And this angel brought the man to the hell. What the hell looked like? The man saw the long table. And by this table, there were a lot of people sitting. On the tables, there were very tasty food. But the people had spoons long like that attached to their arms. And these people tried to take some food and put into their mouths. However, the food went down because the spoon was too long. And the people got more hungry. And what was that? Was a hell. And what was the paradise? The same table, the same food. However, people had the same spoons. However, in the paradise, people was feeding each other. That's the difference. And if we are looking at modern educational systems, look what type of education do we have? Do we educate for hell or for paradise? With all score system, I have to be the best. I have to take for myself. I have to be better than others. We are not educating for paradise. We are not educating all the time for being in a group. People are finishing schools and they are going to company. And there is fear which is guiding people. Fear not losing the job. Because there is a job reduction. Okay, so I have to be better than others. I have to... We have to change the way of thinking about education. Not to educate to hell, but to paradise. So we have to consider that. And to conclude, I would just to tell the last story. One day there was a small boy. His name was Chris. And Chris wanted to play with his father. Father, could you play with me? And the father looked at Chris and said, not today. Today I'm very busy. Tomorrow. Next day, Chris approached the father. Father, you promised me to play with me. Not today, tomorrow. And next day, Chris, I'm sorry, I'm very busy. Next day. And each day, father postponed playing with his child. However, one day, the father was looking at the newspaper. And inside the newspaper, he saw a huge map of the world. And the father got an idea. He took out the map of the world and he calls Chris. Chris, come. Chris comes to the father and the father is destroying the map. And he says, look, I am going to make a puzzle. I am going to destroy the world and now your task is to repair the world. And he gives a pieces of paper to Chris and gives him scotch tape and says, go to your room and repair the world. And Chris goes to his room and the father returns to the computer. He thinks that the 6-year-old boy cannot repair his world. This task is going to take 1 week. However, after 20 minutes, to the room of the father comes Chris with a perfectly scotched map of the world. And the father is very surprised. Chris, how did you do that? And the Chris said, Dad, I am too small to know what the world look like. So it was too difficult for me. So I returned the pieces of paper on another side. And on another side, I saw the image of the man. And I repaired the man. And by repairing the man, I repaired the world.